Hi guys, Darren here bringing you another video from Airless Discounter. Today I want to look at how to clean your Airless sprayer. In front of me is the Graco Ultramax 2695. It does have a fast flush feature, but I won't be using that today because I want to provide you with a cleaning video that you can use for almost all your Airless sprayers. So it's going to be a general cleaning video, and I'll tell you more about the fast flush feature in another video. Alright, so we've just done our spraying. So the machine still has paint in it, there's still pressure, so what do we do to begin the cleaning? So, safety first. So you want to first check that your spray gun has the trigger lock on, and then we are going to follow the safe pressure release procedure, and that is by turning off your sprayer, turning the pressure down to 0, and turning from your pressure valve from a spray down to prime. All right. With that done, we can go ahead and remove the spray holder that has your spray tip in it. And with that, I mean, there'll be some paint on there, and you can just give it a rinse in some water. And in fact, we will look at that a little bit more later, but that'll be fine. All right, so you've got paint in your sprayer, you've got paint in your spray hose and spray gun, and you've got paint in the outtake tube or the siphon tube. So let's start by getting some of the paint off the tubes. So we do that by bringing the sprayer up. You'll notice some of the paint is dripping back into the bucket. And just by using a brush, we can get some of the paint back into the bucket so that we don't waste material. Let's start with the paint that is in the tube. So we'll just detach it here. And we'll want to first swap out your paint for a pail that has some water in it already. We've been using this water for cleaning, but we'll actually use it again right now. Right, so we want to get some paint out of our tube first. So we're going to put it back into our paint pail. So we're going to start by switching the sprayer back on. We've got the valve in the prime position. So we switch it back on, and we're just going to slowly bring the sprayer to prime, and that's going to release some of the paint that's already in the tube. And we're just going to have that going until we see that the material is going to become a bit more fluid, which is when some of the water is coming through. Alright, more paint is coming through, so we're just waiting for that. Alright, now that I see a little bit of water, I stop. We want to make sure that the pressure's off. Alright, so we've got the paint out of the tube. Now we want to make sure we get the paint out of the hose. So in the same fashion, we're going to first point our gun into the paint so we don't waste too much. So I've released the trigger, and I'm actually going to start by pulling down on the trigger first before I add pressure into the machine. By holding the trigger down, now when I add some pressure back into the machine, it's going to come out a bit more gradually. If you first put the pressure up and then you release the trigger, you're going to have a big splashback, and we don't want that. Right, so I've got the trigger. I've got the trigger down, and we're going to turn the machine back. We're going to get it to the spray position, and I'm going to turn on and add some pressure. And that's going to get the material out of the hose and back into the paint bucket. In terms of how much pressure you need, you can get it up to maybe the 12 o'clock position at most, but you really just want to see the paint coming through nice and even. And again, we're just watching until we see a bit of water come through, and then we can stop. You don't want to be diluting the paint too much. Alright, I'm seeing a bit of water there, so I'll stop. The pressure's down to 0. So now we've got the paint out of the tubes. Now we want to give it more of a rinse, so I'm actually going to use some cleaner water just to help rinse out the machine a little bit more, and then we're going to take out the filter. So using just a household brush, this is a soft bristle brush, you can get off some of the paint that was on your tube. And now we're going to run water through the induction tube first, and then we'll run it through the hose and the spray gun afterwards. There's still quite a bit of paint there. You see the water's starting to come through. Alright, with that done, we're then going to make sure we clean out what's left of the hose and the gun. Remember to hold down the trigger first, and then with the trigger held down, then you bring up the pressure gradually. So if you're working with oil-based paints, you're going to be following the exact same procedure, only you'll be using a thinner, for example, if you're working with oil-based, and if you're working with the lacquer, you'd have thinner for lacquer. So basically the cleaning fluid you're using is the same that you'd be using when you're thinning the material. So it's starting to look a bit better, but there's still a little bit of paint residue in there, so you're just going to have to keep running it. Alright, now that I'm seeing the water becoming clearer, I turn down the pressure. I put the pump, I turn it off, put it down, put the pressure off, and I put the valve to prime. So after you've run water through the prime and through the hose and the gun, then you can take out the filter in your spray gun, and you can, you take out the filter. And you can give that a bit of a rinse, and then there'll also be your main filter as well, and you can take that out as well. Just give it a twist. What's great about the graco machines is that the filter is vertical, so you shouldn't have as much material coming out. I still see a little bit at the bottom here. Yeah, there we are. Okay, you'd also take off this filter and give that a rinse as well. You can use your brushes if you want. You can also use one of the other brushes I've got here that also allows you to give the filter a little bit of a cleaning. So once you've done that, the filters can go back into the sprayer, or you can leave them out and put it in when you start your job site again. When you're putting your filter back in, you'll find that there might be some paint residue in the threads here, and you'll want to make sure that you've cleaned around the thread properly, because if there's paint all around in the thread, that's going to give you some issues. So make sure that you get any material that's in between the threads, that you clean that out as well. And when you're putting the filter back, before you do so, you can actually add some seal liquid around the thread, and that will just help the filter gasket and everything stay on there properly. And that also allows you to be able to take it off manually with your hand instead of needing to use a wrench. Because if you are using a wrench and you're not careful, there might still be pressure in the machine. If you feel it's quite stuck, it could be because there's pressure and you use a wrench, and that might create a bit of a hazard. All right. So after the filter is cleaned, you just pop it back into your spray gun. And safety trigger back on. So now all of that's clean. If you're using water-based liquids, water unfortunately is corrosive, which means if you leave water in the machine, it's going to cause corrosion within the working parts. So you'll want to use a mineral spirit or a pump armor, and you will run that through the machine so that when you store it, it's going to be looked after. When the valve is in the spray position, that does help kind of keep all the liquid in place. And you would just keep the hose attached to your sprayer. You can just remove the gun if you want to, or you can actually just leave it on there. But yeah, keep the hose on there. And when you take it out of the water, you can just take a plastic bag and an elastic and just wrap it around at the bottom just to catch any drips that might come out during transportation. For these spray tips and the spray tip holder that you took off in the beginning, the spray tips can go into one of these hourglass containers, and this will make sure that the spray tips are looked after when they are stored. And there'll be more on some of the maintenance liquids that I've used in the description. If you working with your water-based paints or your oil-based paints or a lacquer, just make sure to use the appropriate cleaning liquid depending on the material. And I think there you have it. If you are storing in places where it gets a lot colder, then you can also use an antifreeze to help with protecting your sprayer and looking after it. And that should help you getting your sprayer cleaned. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a comment on how to clean your sprayer, just leave it below. There'll also be a detailed article link in the description that you can go to that can also help you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in our next video.